Starter Pokemon are iconic and beloved by fans, and therefore, they receive a lot of special treatment by Game Freak. Many starter Pokemon are at the forefront of competitive play, and many have received incredible buffs over the years to push them into the forefront if they weren't already. But sometimes starter Pokemon that were once great and have high expectations placed upon them for their future fail to live up to these expectations. Why don't we take a look at some examples of starter Pokemon that we thought would be amazing or stay amazing that actually ended up disappointing us. First up, we have Empoleon, a Pokemon that, when it released, was very good actually. In its debut game of Gen 4, Empoleon is ranked OU, and is a very respectable member of the competitive format in Gen 4. Empoleon has a Water-Steel typing, which is an outstanding defensive typing, with many advantages. Incredible and useful resistances, rock resistance in particular, making you sturdy against stealth rocks. Sand immunity comes in handy, poison immunity of course, and Empoleon is very good defensively against the many dragon types, terrorizing Gen 4. Empoleon is also versatile in this generation, with offensive, defensive, and utility lead sets all being very good. With agility and a Pitaya Berry, it can even act as a boost sweeper. That's all well and good, isn't it? So Empoleon just sounds like a great Pokemon in every avenue. It can operate in different roles, it has a typing that lends itself well to competitive success here, and players at the time probably thought that Empoleon would be a new competitive mainstay, that it would remain relevant in future games. So when Gen 5 came around, it was a bit of a shock to see Empoleon fall from its once prestigious OU status down to the UU tier and no longer be that respectable competitive Pokemon it once was. What happened here? Why did this Pokemon with seemingly everything going for it fall off so hard in Gen 5? When people thought it was so solid that this couldn't happen. Gen 5 was a significant power spike, and the once respectable defensive water type of Empoleon had significant new competition now. With Permanent Rain and new water types stealing the show, the biggest competitor was probably Tentacruel. While it may not have the same defensive advantages as Empoleon, the excellent Rain Dish ability and the utility of Rapid Spin made it an extremely popular and dominant force in the metagame. Other defensive water types like Jellicent and Gastrodon sport water immunity, which is a more valuable trait now in a metagame defined so heavily by rain teams. Empoleon does set itself apart from some of these in ways. Steel typing is a valued trait, which could help to defend against the same dragon type barrage that was a problem in Gen 4. I mean, Latios is here, Pokemon like Dragonite and Kyurem Black love to click Outrage. But Empoleon, even in that arena, is getting a little bit outclassed. Other defensive steel types like Jirachi and Scizor are better fits in the metagame, with superior utility, pivoting options, or just more offensive damage output too, or offensive options that are more useful in the climate of the format. We of course must mention Ferrothorn, who is the new chief steel type in the format. It may seem nice to have a Pokemon that is both a check to those pesky dragons and a water type itself. Could operate maybe as a threat in rain. But offensive water types like Keldeo and Gyarados are also outdoing Empoleon. Empoleon is stuck in the middle of many things that are just way better and more specialized. When you're already running a couple nice bulky waters, your steel type of choice is probably not going to be Empoleon. It feels like you're stacking too many water types. There is no real team where Empoleon feels like it fits, and its options no longer feel unique either. It has Stealth Rock and Knockoff and a solid special move pool. Many things can say that they have such traits now in Gen 5. In Gen 4, Empoleon was really carried by its excellent defensive typing, while its actual stats were not as impressive. In Gen 5, the lower stats are starting to catch up to this guy when something like Kyurem Black exists, so even if you are running this as a dragon answer, Kyurem Black can probably just outrage through it with only 88 defense. The real nail in the coffin here for Empoleon though was that it didn't get a good new hidden ability. I mean, many new Pokemon in Gen 5 got fantastic new hidden abilities. Blaziken of course got Speed Boost, Venusaur got Chlorophyll, these are starter Pokemon getting significantly buffed. What did Empoleon get? Defiant. A terrible, terrible fit. Defiant will grant +2 attack to Empoleon if it receives a stat debuff. This is a completely useless ability on Empoleon. This is even before Defog existed, a common way to proc Defiant. I don't know what is even procking Defiant in the first place, and if it does activate, Empoleon is a special attacker, not a physical attacker. This is just a really bad choice, and Empoleon would rather use its more plain default ability of Torrent, because it actually does something. In a world where so many powerful abilities are defining things like Tentacruel's Rain Dish, Reuniclus's Magic Guard, etc., Empoleon feels like it is lagging behind. And Empoleon unfortunately would remain that way. For the rest of the franchise, it would never return back to OU status. When Gen 9 came around, people did once again have some high hopes for Empoleon, as it seemed to be getting some nice new buffs. Empoleon received the new ability Competitive in this generation, which is a special version of Defiant, and that makes way more sense. Can actually be used in a world where Defog exists. But at this point, it was a bit too late. I mean, with so many generations of new Pokemon and new powerful forces being added to the mix, Empoleon receiving Competitive now just was not nearly enough to help it, really. And by modern standards, Empoleon is far behind the OU power level. What was once such an excellent seeming Pokemon all around, unfortunately just failed to keep up with the ever-shifting climate of the metagame around it, and only saw a single generation of success in OU. A tragedy, because I happen to think Empoleon is one of the best starter designs of all time. It has such a wonderful combination of visual design, typing, and move pool that lends itself to multiple different roles. And its place in Gen 4 OU is fantastic. I think it's one of the coolest and most fun Pokemon in Gen 4 OU. The attempts to buff it were admirable in Gen 9, but they weren't enough. Flip Turn was a nice new option in Empoleon's Gen 9 moveset too, giving it a pivoting move, but once again, just a bit too little too late on that. I personally hope Empoleon receives something more in the future. I think it's a great and recently neglected starter Pokemon that deserves something a bit more than this. This was an attempt to buff it, but I would like to see more from Empoleon in the future. Up next is Sceptile. When Sceptile first came out in its debut game of Gen 3, it seemed promising. This was a grass type unlike its predecessors, because this one was fast and offensively oriented. It's a very fast Pokemon, in fact, with 120 base speed. That's good even by today's standards. And with a respectable 105 special attack, the powerful Sub-Leech Seed combo, and some nice offensive options too, like Leaf Blade and Thunder Punch. Many had high hopes for Sceptile's competitive prospects as this fast, offensive utility grass type. Sceptile was certainly filling a space that hadn't been filled before. It was unique for the time. Unfortunately though, as competitive developed back in Gen 3, Sceptile would find itself struggling to handle common metagame scenarios. Sceptile's best stab move is its Leaf Blade, a 70 power, 100% accurate move with a high crit chance. And unfortunately 70 power on a step move isn't that strong. Funnily enough, this is a stronger grass type move in Gen 3, a generation that lacks good grass type moves. But unfortunately with this being Sceptile's strongest stab attack available to it, you can't help but feel that this guy is a little bit weak. Sceptile struggles to get important KOs in the metagame against enemies like Tyranitar, defensive Starmie sets, Suicune, etc. If you're a Pokemon like this who is fast and frail, you really need to be able to get important one-hit KOs in the metagame. When you're in, it needs to be scary. You know, you gotta actually pose a threat to a large amount of things. Sceptile, unfortunately, just doesn't do that. It is just shy of so many important KOs. Leech Seed may be a great move, but it's a bit hard for Sceptile to use Leech Seed effectively. It's not quite tanky enough to survive incoming hits well, and it's not quite threatening enough to force things out and get good Leech Seeds on a powerful switch out. So it actually finds itself oftentimes struggling to use Leech Seed without putting itself in harm's way against the thing in front of it. While Sceptile may have a good speed stat, it is not the only Pokemon in Gen 3 OU that boasts a high speed stat. Sceptile is competing with other Pokemon like Jolteon, who is also really fast. In fact, it is even faster, but Jolteon happens to have Volt Absorb to help it out on the defensive side and give it nice entry points. Jolteon has the crucial utility of Thunder Wave, options like Baton Pass and Roar, as well as Wish. And Stab Thunderbolt is just a much better and more powerful move than Stab Leaf Blade, regrettably. There is also Starmie, who is a bit slower than Sceptile, but is still faster than most. Has the crucial Stab Hydro Pump, which does threaten to KO many Tyranitar sets. It has Rapid Spin, which is fantastic utility, and superior coverage in Thunderbolt and Ice Beam. With such stiff competition in the role of fast special attacker with utility, Sceptile is struggling to find a place for itself in Gen 3 OU. Sceptile does sometimes see some use in niche situations for its unique options like Pursuit and like Leech Seed. While it may be largely outclassed not only by these fast special attackers but by Celebi, it is still unique and it can be useful in some contexts, but it's a stretch to call this a great Pokemon or anything. It is probably a little bit disappointing considering how solid it looked on the surface in Gen 3. In practice, Sceptile is a little bit of a miss. And the generations to come, unfortunately, were not very kind to Sceptile and did not help it. Even though Sceptile gained access to some more powerful Grass-type options in Gen 4, like Energy Ball and Leaf Storm, it still found itself undesirable as a special attacker. Sceptile finds itself matching up incredibly poorly against the all-new Technician Scizor, who resists Grass, as well as the common Hidden Power Ice coverage, and threatens Scizor not only with bug damage but with priority Bullet Punch. With defensive steel types being common in general, like Body Slam Ironhead Jirachi and Bronzong and Metagross, etc., Sceptile is struggling to pose much of a threat to anything. Yes, you can Leech Seed them and hit them with a weak, non-stab boosted HP fire, but that's hardly enough in this much more fast-paced world, where you just need a bit more than that to succeed. The sub-Leech Seed combo just feels too slow for the Gen 4 environment, which is sped up considerably, and having to choose between Hidden Power Ice or Fire for your coverage of choice is a tough one. When you run Fire, you're threatened by the things that would be hit by Ice, and vice versa. It's a terrible scenario where you just don't have enough coverage to hit all these things. It's too limited. Sceptile also doesn't appreciate more Grass types existing to switch in on Leech Seed. I mean, that was already a problem for Sceptile back in Gen 3, was that Celebi could come in. And that was the only real Grass type to worry about back then. Now you have Breloom being way more popular and threatening you with Mach Punch. You have Roserade being way more popular and threatening you with poison damage. Sceptile's really struggling here to do much of anything. And Gen 5 is of course the time when these Pokemon that were declining sometimes got a new lease on life with a new hidden ability. This was a chance to breathe some new life into Sceptile, but I think they really missed the mark with this in a similar way to giving Defiant to Empoleon. The ability they chose to give to Sceptile was Unburden, an ability that doubles speed on held item loss or consumption. It's a great ability that can be fantastic, but I don't think Sceptile is a great user of Unburden. Activating Unburden with Sceptile in a reasonable capacity has proved challenging. One of the better ways is with Acrobatics and a Flying Gem, and in that case you can build the Sceptile in a more physical direction with its physical options like Leaf Blade, Drain Punch, Earthquake, and Swords Dance to boost. But Sceptile only has 85 base attack. And on the special side, though you could run a gem that activates on a special attack and gain the boost there, Sceptile doesn't have any special boosting move, like Nasty Plot or Calm Mind. It only has Swords Dance, which is not very good on it because it's weak on the physical side. Maybe if it had Nasty Plot, you could make Sceptile work with a Unburdened set and use it as a sweeper, but Sceptile with double speed just isn't threatening enough to really sweep consistently. Especially in the OU tier, which is just getting more and more powerful with each game. So Unburdened Sceptile felt like a bit of a miss, and not a good enough new tool to really bring Sceptile back into the conversation. Sceptile did receive a new Mega in Gen 6, another attempt to breathe some new life into this Pokemon, but Mega Sceptile is one of the more unimpressive Megas in the game, and one that failed to meet OU status, actually. Mega Sceptile becomes a Grass Dragon type and gains the ability Lightning Rod. Kind of a bizarre ability to get on this when it already has a ×4 resistance to Electric. Electric moves were never a problem for Sceptile, that was never its weak point or anything, so not a very useful one. The stat increases are appreciated here, as well as the new Dragon typing being a bit of an improvement, but 145 special attack is pretty low for a Mega actually, especially compared to peers like Mega Alakazam. 145 speed is very good, and that gives Mega Sceptile a bit of niche value in OU sometimes, I think, but Mega Sceptile is just a little bit of a weak Mega. It's hard to justify using this when you can only have one Mega per team, and also when its offensive potency isn't even that strong for a Mega, and it does feel pretty easy to stop this with simple defensive Pokemon. In current day, Sceptile in its base form is a ZU ranked Pokemon, which I believe to be rather tragic for a new starter that was so fresh and promising for its time back when it came out. Attempts to push Sceptile back into the conversation have been largely unsuccessful, and for a while, nothing has really been given to Sceptile. In Gen 9, there's no way that this is anywhere close to an OU Pokemon. It feels a bit silly to even ask them to buff Sceptile again when they've already tried a few times here and even given it a new Mega. So I'm not sure if Sceptile has much of a future, folks, unfortunately. I suppose this is a starter that will just stay forgotten. I am doubtful that Sceptile will get much noteworthy new additions in future games, regrettably. Up next is Superior. And Superior is one of those starters that received such a significant buff that people thought it would remain competitively relevant forever. Superior in Gen 6 received the new ability Contrary. While it debuted at an unimpressive NU ranking, this new ability skyrocketed Superior right up to the competitive forefront. Contrary is a great offensive ability that inverts all stat stage changes. If you were to lose stats, you will gain them instead, which synergizes outstandingly with the move Leaf Storm. Because Leaf Storm is a high power move with the detriment of lowering your special attack, but now this detriment turns into a benefit because you raise your special attack by 2. Such an unbelievably powerful synergy between Contrary and Leaf Storm here that turns Superior into a fantastic snowbally win condition. Superior's stats are pretty unimpressive, especially its low 75 special attack, but this Leaf Storm Contrary combo was enough for that to no longer matter, and Superior is one of the strongest Pokemon in Gen 6 OU as a result of this. Superior's excellence persisted in Gen 7 as well. It wasn't quite as prolific, but still incredibly powerful in OU. To tell Gen 6 and 7 players that Superior would eventually fall off would probably be met with laughter and doubt. Superior falling from OU status is unthinkable with something as powerful as Contrary Leaf Storm. It's worth noting as well that much of Superior's power also came from its great utility option of Glare, which is able to inflict paralysis even on ground types. And also Superior is one of those Pokemon that relies a lot on Hidden Power for coverage. Hidden Power alongside Leaf Storm actually hits pretty hard and is very important to hit the things that resist grass. Hidden Power Rock, Fire, and Ice being common complementary types alongside Leaf Storm. Superior was not present in the Gen 8 games, it was cut in the controversial Dexit, but it returned to the game in Gen 9. And although Superior lost its famous Hidden Power option, which was very important for it, as Hidden Power was cut from the game in Gen 8, when players heard that Superior was returning, there was overall high hopes for it. I mean, it had this incredible competitive success already established, and Superior seemed like a prime abuser of the new Terra mechanic. Terra allows you to change your type, and with Terra Blast, you have a move that mimics the Terra type of your choosing. Therefore, Superior can get much more powerful universal coverage than Hidden Power. Terra Blast is in many ways better than Hidden Power. Superior could get a stab-boosted 80 power ground, or rock, or fire move now, which seems very promising with Leaf Storm for the snowball potential. I mean, Gen 9 is a world where boost sweepers are generally hugely buffed by Terra. You'd think Superior would be no different as a boost sweeper that also attacks while boost sweeping. It seems perfect for Gen 9. But when Gen 9 came around, people were a bit disappointed with Superior. And it did not destroy the metagame as people thought it might. In fact, it didn't even end up ranked in the OU tier anymore. The once ever-present and incredible Superior is now RUBL ranked. Rather disappointing for Pokemon that people had such high hopes for in Gen 9. What went wrong here? Well, although Terra Blast with Terastallization may seem incredibly good for Superior, it is a bit of a double-edged sword. Yes, Superior can be very good when it Terastallizes, but it also kind of needs to Terastallize to function. Its coverage is so limited without Terastallizing to get a new Terra Blast type that if you don't Terastallize with it, it is laughably easy to stop. I mean, the best coverage beyond Leaf Storm that you get is Dragon Pulse, which is okay, but it's also very easy to switch in against. Superior is completely destroyed by common Pokemon like Goldengo and Galarian Slowking. It may be able to glare some of them, but Goldengo in particular is completely immune to being glared. Galarian Slowking can, of course, stomach being glared at least. It's already slow. So Superior kind of needs to Terra to function. I mean, when it Terras, it's pretty good and it gets hard hitting powerful coverage. But needing to Terra to be good is a lot to ask, because Terra is a dynamic mechanic. Every game you're going to Terra with something different depending on the matchup. And you can Terra for many different reasons in different situations. When you're running a Pokemon that sucks unless it Terras, you are inherently restricting the rest of your team, and you're running a Pokemon that they call a Terra Hog. It needs to Terra to function, and therefore your flexibility is just inherently so much worse when Superior's on the team. And honestly, even when it does Terra, Superior is still kind of paling in comparison to other special attackers in the format that may want to Terra instead. Pokemon with better options. Faster Pokemon, more threatening Pokemon. The explosive power of Leaf Storm Contrary is not so impactful when your options are too limited to even take advantage of it, and your base special attack is so low by modern standards that it's just easier to stop you now. Superior's return to Gen 9 was overall a little bit underwhelming, unfortunately. And without hidden power in its moveset, I'm not sure Superior will ever achieve the heights it once achieved. Superior really needed hidden power to bring everything together. Without it, I'm not sure if it will ever be so good again. Now, Superior is one that I'm not sure if I want them to buff. I think if you give this good coverage, that's a very dangerous prospect. If this gets Flamethrower or something, we might regret ever saying that it should have been buffed. It's part of the design that this has the powerful Leaf Storm Contrary, but limited options to take advantage of that. You're sort of walking on thin ice with Superior here. You have a potentially insanely powerful Pokemon. I shudder at the thought of this getting even more moves that can synergize with Contrary. What if this got Overheat? I think that we would be running for the hills in that case. Maybe Superior could just accept its excellence back at Gen 6 and 7 and say that's a solid career, and retire with grace. Superior was a bit annoying back then too, dare I say. I don't know if I want Superior back at the forefront of the meta, but the truth is that this was a disappointing Pokemon for many in Gen 9. Typhlosion was a long-neglected starter Pokemon for many years, from the beginning outclassed by other fire types. So when we learned that in the Legends Arceus game that Hisuian Typhlosion would be coming into existence, it was a pleasant surprise. Typhlosion is long overdue for some sort of new form, new buffs, etc. And this was a promising one, wasn't it? Hisuian Typhlosion becomes a fire ghost type, a much better offensive typing. And when Hisuian Typhlosion was confirmed to be coming to Gen 9 via Pokemon Home, the signature move Infernal Parade also sounded promising. A 60 power ghost type special attack with both a 30% burn chance and the Hex effect. Double power if the target is status. That's a great move, combining two great effects into one. A promising improvement for the original Typhlosion, and certainly a step in the right direction. But when this became available in Gen 9, OU power level was certainly out of the question. And there's many reasons for that, to be honest. Its stats are a bit low for modern standards. There are competing fire ghost types in OU, like Skeledirge and Ceruledge. Hisuian Typhlosion has a different role to them, but it's still a factor. But the most damning part of all was that Hisuian Typhlosion got an incredibly lackluster new ability in the mainline games. Its ability was Frisk. Whenever a Pokemon gets Frisk, it's such a shame, because this is such a boring ability. Whether you're a casual gamer or a competitive gamer, this ability is basically as good as having nothing at all. On Switch In, you will identify the enemy's held item. It's vaguely useful to get a bit of information, but you would rather, of course, have an ability that actually impacts the battle in some way, providing some immunity or doing something. Even if this just kept Flash Fire from regular Typhlosion, it would be a significant upgrade from Frisk, which is just a complete disappointment. Is it even thematically appropriate? Does Hisuian Typhlosion look like the type of fella to frisk somebody? Maybe, I don't know. Regardless, this was the big nail in the coffin. Especially because the other two Hisuian starters, Samurott and Decidueye, both got really good abilities. Hisuian Samurott got Sharpness to boost many of its slicing-based moves, a nice offensive ability, and Hisuian Decidueye got Scrappy to be able to hit Ghost and Normal types with its stab fighting type attacks. That's a good ability as well. Why did Hisuian Typhlosion get such a bad one? With a decent ability, you could see this being much better than it is. It's ranked PU in Gen 9, which is only one tier higher than base Typhlosion, who is ZU. It's always a shame when they do try to breathe new life into an old forgotten Pokemon and they miss the mark completely like this. Always such a shame. But regrettably, that's how it happened for Typhlosion. It's terrible because so many of the Hisuian Pokemon are good upgrades that did improve the original, or that are competitively relevant, but not Typhlosion, not Typhlosion. And finally, we have Hisuian Decidueye, another Hisuian starter, and this is maybe a little bit of personal delusion from Jim here. A bit of personal delusion of my own. Because I, when I first saw this guy, thought it sounded pretty good, and could maybe be OU viable. How foolish, in retrospect, do I feel? Hisuian Decidueye was promising to me for a couple of reasons. I mean, first of all, with the ability Scrappy, Hisuian Decidueye could potentially pose a bit of a threat to some real problem Pokemon in OU. In particular, Goldengo was the big one I was thinking of, because with Scrappy you can hit Goldengo with fighting moves, and that is a powerful prospect, isn't it? What makes this even better is that Hisuian Decidueye gets access to Defog. So it would be a Defogger that can threaten Goldengo with lethal force. And it's also a Defogger that has the nice option of Roost and U-Turn for some healing and pivoting. I thought this could be an interesting offensive pivoting hazard remover that may match up well against the most common anti-hazard removal Pokemon, Goldengo. I thought that sounded promising. And Hisuian Decidueye can do all of that, but I think that the reality of the situation is that a grass fighting typing simply isn't very good defensively. I mean, Hisuian Decidueye can scarcely switch in against Goldengo and take a big stab booster to make it rain, or even a Shadow Ball. It's not exactly a defensive wall or anything with these stats. It has an okay 88 HP and 95 special defense, but without Ghost or Steel resistance, can it really do this job very well against Goldengo? I wouldn't say so. It's also a slow Pokemon. 112 attack is decent, but probably not enough to cut it in modern climate. And Hisuian Decidueye regrettably just doesn't really wall anything, nor does it offensively threaten anything enough to be OU functional, I don't believe. Now, Hisuian Decidueye does have an excellent signature move, Triple Arrows, which is also why I thought it might be promising. I thought that this could be like a bit of a wall breaker with this move. Triple Arrows is really good. It's a 90 power fighting type attack that has 3 effects in one, which is crazy. It has high crit rate, it has a 50% chance to lower defense, and then on top of that, a 30% chance to flinch. So it's got crit rate, defense drop, and flinch chance. And I was thinking, couldn't this be used to power through Dondozo or something? These passive defensive Pokemon like Dondozo, because it's got all these different ways that it can power through it. You could crit it, or defense drop, or flinch it, prevent it from resting up. I thought that sounded promising. But a signature move this good doesn't cut it when everything else about you is just not up to par with the metagame, unfortunately. Just switching in on the field and functioning in the high power world of Gen 9 OU is not in the cards for Hisuian Decidueye. And like I said, it's not as if everyone thought that this guy would be amazing. They probably all saw the stats and realized the reality of the situation. I, however, had a bit of copium in my veins when I saw this guy. I like this guy. I like its unique signature move. I like that it has Scrappy and Defog and all these tools. And its visual design is also cool, in my opinion. Regrettably, though, my dreams were shattered when this was available. It wasn't any good at all. How terrible. I admire its design, though. It's unique, it's cool. I also admire the original Decidueye. But it was not meant to be, no. Here's hoping, folks, that with the new Mega starters in Legend ZA, that history won't repeat itself and we won't be disappointed all over again by new forms of long-forgotten starters. Mega Meganium finally exists. One of the most long-requested Megas of all time, for a starter Pokemon that might be the most neglected in the whole series. With a Grass Fairy typing, superior defense is now an 143 special attack, There is some promise here, but it's really going to depend on what Mega Meganium's ability ends up being. That's really going to be the deciding factor, and that we don't know yet. Last time they gave Meganium a new ability, it was Leaf Guard, which stinks massively. Please don't give it Frisk or something. Give it something good this time. Game Freak, give Meganium something good for crying out loud. Mega Embor also exists in Legend ZA, and we know its stats. It's still a firefighting type, and its stats do not inspire confidence in me, I'm gonna be honest. It's got 148 attack, average for a Mega. It's slow. I'm not seeing this doing anything, and I'm thinking that this will suffer from similar problems the original Embor did. Being another firefighting type that doesn't meaningfully set itself apart from the other ones that already exist, or from other Pokemon in general with similar offensive capabilities. We will have to wait and see if this ends up being another disappointment. My feeling is that it will be. I like its design though. Starter Pokemon are interesting. Some receive incredible buffs, and are clearly favorites of Game Freak that they want to keep in the conversation for years and years to come. Some, however, feel completely neglected and outdated. Some of these I talked about in this video were good when they came out, or at least promising enough, but didn't receive anything good or new to keep up with the ever-increasing power level of later games. And in the cases of Hisuian, Typhlosion, and Decidueye, they were dead on arrival. Not even successful in their debut mainline games, despite having promising-seeming features in speculation. Who knows what the future will hold, folks? Which was your favorite Pokemon discussed in today's video? Mine's probably Empoleon. Let me know yours down below in the comments, and thank you for watching.